Hi everyone, welcome to After Class,
a podcast by two passionate adult ballerinas about all things adult ballet related.
and some random thoughts in between.
We're so glad you're here.
So grab your water bottle
Or a cup of coffee.
and join us for a quick chat after class. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of After Class. Today we're going to be talking about connecting or linking steps in ballet. We're going to explain what are they, we're going to mention the names of these steps, and also why they are important for a dancer. Hello, Hannah. Welcome.
Hello, it's so good to see you.
We're talking about this topic today because the last episode that we recorded together, we ended up just talking about one step. I think it was contretemps. You were asking like, oh, my teacher does the contretemps differently. How do we do it? And then we just kept going and going on the different linking steps. And these can be used as a way for you also to be more intermediate towards advanced. If you learn the terminology and you know what they mean, you'll be like, oh.
And I think linking steps they're so important, but a lot of times what I've noticed as an adult dancer is in class, a lot of times they're not really thoroughly explained or spent a lot of time on. And so they tend to be, especially if you're going to open classes, they tend to be something that the teachers will just generally assume that you know and will move through pretty quickly when they're breaking down choreography or explaining a piece of choreography. So I think it's so important if you need to, and if you're not clear and you feel like you're struggling in open classes, one of the things that might be contributing to that is just feeling like you're not super confident in understanding these linking steps. And so I think it's a great way to spend your time kind of doing some supplementary learning outside of classes, going on YouTube and looking up these steps. We'll put in the show notes links to different videos that kind of break down the steps we're talking about, since obviously it's an audio podcast and we can't show them. We'll put links to what the steps are and breakdowns of them. Like I know, Yelena, you have a lot of these broken down in like a 10-minute video on your channel where you just go over this one step. And like, I think that's so helpful for adults because like I was saying, a lot of times these steps won't necessarily be broken down in class, but to your point, they're the steps that will really make your dancing more fluid and give you that confidence to dance through the whole combination instead of feeling like you're getting hung up on these connecting steps that the teacher's probably just saying really quickly and saying, okay, tombe pas de bourrée, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, what is really a tombe pas de bourrée? Like you might not know, but it's probably going to come up a lot. So they're very important and a really good thing to spend time on, I think, for adults.
Definitely. Exactly what you said. And that's why we took this topic today. So let's begin by saying what are linking or connecting steps. So the linking steps, according to my school, always you all need to remember that although I teach the Royal Academy of Dance methodology, I am an specialist on the Cuban ballet. So that's my strongest background, meaning most of my references are always going to come from the Cuban methodology. And I'm literally reading it from the Cuban methodology revised last year. So linking steps or connecting steps are these little steps that make everything fluid. Do not feel cut. So think about when you're doing a combination. Let's say that you're doing a port de bras in the center. Most of the times you're going to have a failli, a chassé, or a pas balancé or waltz. Those three steps are already linking steps to go from a big port de bras to a chassé to give you the next line of your arabesque. So they are meant also, as you do the chassé, what else are you doing? You're transferring your weight through the space. So linking steps are not only meant to help you to make everything more fluid, movements less stiff, less shallow, but also help you to glide, to transfer your weight, to move from A to B while you do, like, if you think about it, when we do tombe, pas de bourrée, glissade, grand jeté, the main step there, the technical step was the grand jeté. But you did before that 3 linking steps. Tombe, pas de bourrée, glissade, and then you did the technical steps.
Hi friends, just wanted to remind you that thebusybunhead.com is now live, so make sure you head over and check that out. It is a hub for all things adult ballet. Right now we have published a list of all the adult ballet intensives happening in 2025, so make sure you go check out the website and find your next adult ballet intensive.
Now, after we know that the steps are meant to give you more fluidity with the movement, transfer weight within the space, what are actually those steps? I have a list here from my school, but if you heard your teachers calling any other steps, linking steps or connecting steps, please let me know because I'm always open to learn. Okay, so the linking steps that we have from the Cuban Ballet School, we have glissade, pas de bourrée, tombe, pas de chat. We have failli, couru, jeté fermé, contretemps, coupé coupé, pas balancé or waltz. We have sautés as well, tamliers and piques. Now, which one didn't you recognize from that list?
Well, I know what a coupe is, but I wouldn't have thought that that was a linking step. I would have thought that was just choreography. So that's interesting that that's broken down as a transition step. Was chasse on there?
Yeah,
Chasse
chassé,
was on there. Yeah.
failli,
Yep.
couru.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big one. And it's interesting too because I think in addition to obviously the methodology that you're teaching having a part to play in it, I think a lot of times teachers kind of tend to have their favorites of which linking or transition steps they use more than others. So, some teachers will use a couple of these a lot and not so much the other ones. And then some teachers will use other ones that are kind of their favorites. So some of these I definitely do more than others in class.
And also, I do remember, although in our methodology, we actually teach those just as a linking step. So I mean, not to students, but to me, while I was learning the methodology, the way I was taught the linking step is this is the ballet technique, these are the exercises by family. And because, so the battement is the battement family, battement tendu, battement jeté, battement glissé, or battement blah, 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 right? So everything that has battement in their names belong to the family of battement. So we have the linking steps as one big family. So we recognize them immediately. But some of them are taught in the first 5 years of the career, which is the more beginners one. I will say what we call vocational students. And then we have the national students where you learn the other ones. Out of that list that I share with you, which one did you recognize from your classes that you've done lots? And how does your teacher use them to actually link a glissade exercise or a gran allegro?
Yeah, we do. Even today, actually, we did tombe, pas de bourrée, glissade. Actually, we didn't do grand jeté today. We did grand saut de chat, which I always prefer. I think saut de chats are easier than grand jetés. But yeah, so we use that glissades a lot. That's a big one that we use even in tendu exercises and things for changing feet. We do them, you can do glissade without changing, but you can also do glissade changing. So I think that's another big thing that transition steps are used for is to switch legs. Pas de bourrée, obviously, like that's one of the main functions of pas de bourrée is to change whichever leg is in front. So anytime you're needing to, from a choreographic standpoint, get on the other leg, throw a little pas de bourrée in there and voila, you're on the other leg. So it's obviously another one that we do a lot. But I think an interesting thing too with talking about connecting steps, linking steps, transition steps, whatever you want to label them, is just that they really do, that we talked about at the beginning, like they set you apart, I think, as a more advanced dancer when you are taking the opportunity with them to also dance them rather than just kind of thinking of them as a transition step and kind of just trying to get through it. If you really are continuing to dance them, I think that's where it separates kind of the beginner from the more intermediate dancer. And one of the reasons I am thinking of this is because this last week, the Prix de Lausanne has been going on. And so watching the kids perform, which is crazy because like they are kids. They're like 15, 16, and they're just insanely talented. And one of the things that I was noticing though and watching really all of them, because you have to be at such a high level even to qualify to be at the Prix de Sang, but the winners especially, is noticing how every single step, even the transition steps, like something like a pas de bourrée, is really danced and not just kind of thrown away as like a transition to the bigger moments. You know, it's like it's not just like, oh, I have to do these little things to get to the big moment. It's like really using those steps and really dancing them and making them look smooth and fluid and graceful. And that's what makes them advanced dancers. You know, I think so often as adults, our focus goes to like the big moments, hitting a turn or a jump or something like that. But it's all the little linking steps leading up that are really gonna make you look and feel confident and feel like you look like an advanced dancer or a more advanced dancer. Because I think when we're fumbling through those steps, they tend to make us feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. This looks messy, you know, but when you can really get comfortable with them and start dancing through them, that's when I think the magic kind of starts to happen.
I think also taking a little bit more of autonomy on the learning as an adult. Like it's hard because it happened to me with you guys. Like when every time I said glissade alternate at the bar, because that's the way we used to change sides, right? It was just easier and cute. You would do glissade alternate, and then you're to the other side, like you said, changing legs, changing side. But take autonomy on your learning, and if you don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, making that investment in learning outside of the class, I think can help you get so much more out of your classes. Like there's definitely been times, especially when I was kind of first going back to in-person classes, where there was just a step where I was like, I don't fully grasp that. And I knew there wasn't time to break that down in class. And so I would literally just go home and search for it on YouTube and search for a breakdown and then practice it on my own time. And then when I was able to go into my next class, I felt so much more comfortable in just the entire piece of choreography because I wasn't stressing about the linking step. And the nice thing is too about making that investment is that they are steps that are going to get used over and over and over for the most part. And so it's definitely not a waste to put in that time to really learn them and get comfortable with them because they are steps that are going to come up a lot in class. I think too, maybe Elena, you could give maybe some pointers for these steps because I think there are things in common, even though they're all different. There's things in common from a technique point that will really help you. Like I'm thinking of things like really finishing each step, like especially when you do things like a glissade, finishing the movement. So maybe you could talk a little bit about technique stuff for these steps.
Yeah. So, for instance, let's talk about confusing things that could be a tombe, a pique, right? So these two steps, tombe and pique, sometimes could be confusing. Like, okay, yeah, I'm moving forward. Let's think about the tombe as something that always starts with stretched legs, and you're always gonna finish with a plie. A tombe is never gonna finish with a straight leg. So that would be a little bit of a rule, a technique key that you will learn. So every time your teacher said tombe, one leg is gonna end up in plie and the other one is gonna end up open, either in your coup de pied on the back, so tombe coup de pied back, or tombe tendu to derrière, or tombe arabesque. So that supporting leg is always gonna go in plie. Now, piqué is the opposite. Piqué is going to start in plie always, and it's going to always again transfer your weight and like moving forward to the sides or to the back. Piqué always transfer weight within the space, and you're going to end with legs straight. So you're going to start in plie and you're going to piqué everything straight to the fifth, piqué to arabesque flat, releve, or on point. That supporting leg is always going to be stretched.
Yeah.
Now, glissade, for instance, you're always going to transfer your weight forward, side, back, or diagonal, depends the choreography. And it starts in plie and finish in plie. Passing through your tendues stretch, your second position or fourth position releve, over the little bridge or jumping over the little tado, but we always finish in plie with accent in.
One of the things that I love about ballet is that there are rules, and in talking about these steps and what you were saying, like the difference between a tombe and a piqué, like one finish in a plie, when you finish on a straight leg. I think those things too, especially if you're more of a beginner dancer, it's really helpful if you take some time, almost like classroom time. I think a lot of times we think about our ballet training as being in the studio dancing, but one of the things that has been really helpful for me and my journey the last couple of years is even just spending a little bit of time every week doing almost more like ballet homework and just watching things and Googling things that maybe I found confusing, or watching some videos of technique things, because those are the things that you can really bring into the classroom, and learning things like those rules. If you know the rule that every time you do piqué, you start in a plie and you're stepping onto a straight leg, and anytime you hear piqué, whether it's piqué arabesque or whatever it is, piqué turns, you'd know in your mind piqué always means stepping onto a straight leg. That knowledge will really serve you in class to help you feel like you have a better idea of what's going on, and to help you feel less confused and less stressed. And so I think that's another great way to approach your ballet training, is setting aside some time for study. And it really does, I think, enrich the time when you're in the studio, if you're willing to take that little bit of extra time to do the more like academic part
It
of
does
ballet
make
training.
sense. Of course, like finding the difference between those steps. Something else that just came to mind is failli and chassé. They are confusing steps. Like if you don't really know how one relates to the other one or how one is done, you will be confusing with your entire life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like not being hard on yourself for not knowing these things, because even as you were saying, like, oh, Hannah knows because she's been, back in studio and doing class, and it's like, yeah, and I had to look a lot of this stuff up. I know,
It's training, right?
I didn't know either. And so, I think again, like I was saying at the beginning, I think a lot of times teachers, because they've been doing it their whole life, have been teaching a really long time, there's kind of this assumed level of knowledge. And of course there has to be, to a degree, because they have to be able to get through a class. So a lot of times there's kind of this baseline that they assume that you have. But if you're not understanding, not feeling bad, and not feeling like, why do I not get even the, quote unquote simple steps? Because all of these transition and linking steps aren't necessarily easy, and they're also in French. So if you don't speak French, like, you're not going to necessarily know what's implied in these steps. And so I think giving yourself the grace and having patience to learn and look them up. Like, there's no shame in having to go home and look up what these steps mean, just because everyone in your class maybe seemed like they knew what they meant, that they had to learn it at some point too. And I think a lot of times for adults, our learning is almost like retroactive in some ways. Yeah, like sometimes we learn more advanced steps broken down, and we learn those sooner in the learning process than we get to like the more linking steps, because we're just kind of in survival mode and taking classes, and we're just like, oh, okay, like, oh, there's a big jump there, like I need to at least get that part, and so that's what we focus on. And that completely makes sense. So I think giving yourself the grace.
I love having you in the podcast because for me it's like I'm going in the technical side and then you're like, no, focus on this. There is a big jump over there and you gotta do that big jump, but there is something else linking that big jump.
Yeah.
Like, it's so true.
It's true,
I guess
because when you're in a class with a bunch of people and like the teacher explains it, like I think in our minds a lot of times we go for like, what's the thing that I have to do to stand out the least, like if I miss it, you know what I mean? And so if you're doing a grande allegro combination, you're like, okay, well, I know on 6 there's a big jump, and so like I just, at minimum, I need to try to hit that jump on 6, and everything that kind of happens before and after, you're like, I'll just
the skips.
yeah, but I think a lot of times, I mean, I don't know, like, shout me out if you've been there. I've definitely been there in class where I'm just like, oh God, okay, ah. So it's all the little steps that then you have to go back and learn. And I think that's a really common thing for adults. If you've done play your whole life, you've learned it in a very linear way where you're learning the simplest to the most difficult, in a clean trajectory. And most adults haven't had that experience. We're kind of all over the map in how we're learning things and when we're learning things.
And the other thing is, even for me, like I should be the expert that knows everything. And I still don't rely on what I know. I did my research before we started just because I want to know what other people have written about, what they consider the linking steps. I know what my school does, and I know how I see the linking steps and how much it changes an exercise and how more movement and fluidity and less shallow and less cut and less stiff the movements look like. But I wanted to see. My point is that I'm learning as well. So it's not like I know everything. I'm also learning and I keep reading and I keep loving. And the way you said that the steps, I forgot what you said about the linking steps, that there is not just transfer weight, but changing the foot. I didn't even think of that because for me, that's action reaction, right? That's just like the end result of it. For me, is I help you to transfer through the space. I help you to do that transitioning, gliding, and it makes everything more fluid. But look at you as an adult, you were like, yeah, but we also use them a lot in class to actually change the foot so I can start to the other side. As a ballet teacher, I didn't see it from that point of view.
Yeah, like just doing pas de bourrée. Like I remember when I was first learning as a kid and having to do pas de bourrée so many times over and over and over to remember the mechanics of like changing my feet, you know? And so, yeah, it's funny. Different things stick in our minds for different reasons, but that's why we have the teacher perspective and the student perspective.
And if anyone heard that, that's my dog stretching in the background saying, see ya, everyone, I want my food. On that note, Billy said, let's go.
Really said we're done, which actually we are. So that works out.
We actually are. Yeah, so we're going to link a few of the videos that we can find on how to the steps.
Yeah, and definitely check out Yelena's YouTube channel for breakdowns because I know you have at least a few of these on your channel that are a really nice, clear, slow, methodical breakdown of each of these steps because, like we talked about in the episode, it will definitely serve you well over and over and over again in class to feel confident with these steps, and you'll get a lot more out of your classes if these just are in your body and in your memory. So we hope this episode was helpful for you guys and that you enjoyed it, and please let us know if you have any requests for upcoming topics. We would love to include them in our planning, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye. Thank you for listening to After Class.
Join the community on YouTube and Instagram or come dance with us, our weekly Zoom classes for adult ballerinas like you.
Links included in the episode description. Special thank you to our sponsors.
See you next time after class. Podcast produced by Mission Bridge Media.